So, Alhamdulillah, all the documentation is there. So it's end of the month. So because the end of the month, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to kind of make sure everything's on par. So I apologize for that. But as a community, we should know that there's a lot of work that needs to be done in this masjid. There's a lot of work to be done in this community. And inshallah, we're planning to create a committee of community service, which means that we have people in hospitals, we have people in hospices that we need to get training to go and just sit and meet with. It is a very big dawah and a very big service from the community. So I'm working on sketching that and putting that together, inshallah, how that would look. In addition to how we can expand our food pantry services, because word is that Mini's Food Pantry, which is like across the street, they're going to be moving to East Plano, and so the need in this community is going to rise quite swiftly. So alhamdulillah, there's a lot of planning in place and a lot of work that needs to be done, so alhamdulillah. That being said, mashallah, we have our topic of discussion and we have our Ramadan planner. Let's, bismillah, start with our Ramadan planner. Anyone successfully accomplished the food schedule? That's been hard. I'll tell you, that's been hard. So we kind of got past pasta and keema and roast chicken and cereal and milk and eggs in breakfast, but yeah, it's getting hard. I think if anyone has it, please present. If not, then let's keep chipping away on it. Anyone?
For me, I have no change.
Mm-hmm.
I don't change. In Ramadan, we have the
Mashallah.
same meal, like we don't change. Maybe sometimes we just add it for the fiber, like more salad or soup. That's it.
Mashallah.
Yeah.
Keeping it simple, basically.
Yeah, very.
Mashallah, it's very good. I think the best thing is to create that, not just to tone down the expectations. I'm not saying every home has expectations, but at the same time, understanding where your time can go. Because number 6, which we want to discuss today, it really is based on how much time you can allocate for yourself. Ramadan is your month. So for example, you are a mother, you're a wife, you are busy with work and whatever else. Now Allah forbid at this moment, you get taken into the hospital and they say you have to be here for the next 3 weeks. Life doesn't stop. Life goes on. But our whole system of how our house functions changes. It changes 180 degrees right there and then. So in the same way, Ramadan is a month that I'm going to hospital. I'm going for my spiritual ICU care, and for that, I need my time. And Ramadan is now becoming more about others than it is about self. It's more about socializing than it is about spirituality. It's very dangerous where things are going. And that's why we can't feel the barakah and the rahmah of Ramadan, and that's why we're not inclined towards it post-Ramadan, and that trend continues to weaken. So Ramadan's a booster shot. If the whole year, 10, 11 months, the religion was kind of like this, Ramadan is that booster shot that brings it back up to par. But if we didn't get that right booster shot, then our religion is really is going down. And subhanAllah, it's scary what's happening. This article someone forwarded to me the other day, I was just reading it, I never read all of it, about how a sister says, after my research and study on Islam, I don't think hijab is important. It's crazy. So after, go to the doctor, say, doctor, after my research on WebMD, I don't think I have diabetes. I think you're lying to me. The doctor seldomly shows us the results that prove the diagnosis that he has diagnosed. He tells us, we listen, and we move on. But our religion is really becoming a tool to point out oppression or to point out injustice. Our religion, if you understand, there was only injustice in this world. Islam brought back that justice. It was the same justice that Isa alayhi salam was propagating, but they wanted to kill him because of it. It was the same justice that Musa alayhi salam was propagating, but his people were nagging down his throat. At the same time, Pharaoh was trying to kill him. It's hard. It's hard to understand it in context, but you know what? There's no other choice but to understand it and to accept it and to follow it, because if not, our religion is dead tomorrow. It really is, with such sad state of affairs. And then you have, I don't know if I talked about it last week, the ex-Muslims. If you go on YouTube and you watch ex-Muslims, they went into ISNA conference, they started asking people, well, what do you think about us? We're no longer Muslim, and it was a confrontational approach. Some people were saying bad things to them, and they were just recording it and showing people. That's why we left Islam. Look at these people. They're so weird. There's Muslims who last Ramadan posted on Twitter and in Instagram how they were drinking alcohol for lunch and having pork ribs because they didn't believe in fasting. This is called the rebellious nature has come out. And this rebellion has come out because we think Islam is weird, it's backwards. So if we as parents and as adults don't show what Islam is, who's going to show it? That's the biggest question. That's $1 million question. Who's going to show what Islam is? You know, we have to really do this as a collective effort. If not, then the people who are misinterpreting our religion, their voices are amplified louder than those who are representing the truth of Islam. And that's just the case, unfortunately. So subhanAllah, yeah, there's a lot that's at stake. Ramadan is a month to kind of make things better. Let's try to make sure that happens. So mashallah, we're fasting 1 day a week. We're working on that menu for the fridge, inshallah. We're calculating our food expenses because we want to do more charity this month. We know that if a person does something non-obligatory this month, it is rewarded equivalent to an obligatory act. So alhamdulillah, why not do more sadaqah? People talk about zakat. I just want to touch this on a side note. So people say it's good to give Ramadan it's good to give zakat in Ramadan, or should be only given in Ramadan. Yes, Ramadan is good to be given in, zakat is good to be given in Ramadan only because the reward of it is multiplied. But don't try to take your zakat as something that you just want to get rid of from your paychecks. You're just going to write a check and get rid of it from your account and think that you're getting reward. Truly, zakat is something that should be calculated once a year, and the money should be put aside, and it should be given during Ramadan, before Ramadan, or after Ramadan, wherever you see the need arise. Don't just say, okay, to so-and-so organization, here's $2,000 zakat, take it and do what you want. No, zakat is to help people. It's not to go sit in a bank account for someone, right? A lot of these organizations, unfortunately, and the truth is, they're sitting on millions, and all they do is when a tragedy occurs, they allocate like $2-3 million for it, and then they start doing fundraiser. So the question I've asked big organizations is, the money that I'm giving, is it going towards restoring your bank balance, or is it going towards the people? It's a very simple concept. Zakat is your responsibility. You know people, or you may know people that need zakat. You need to make sure you get it to them. Just say, I want to give my zakat in Ramadan, but I find out of someone who's needy right now, and I know I can help them. Give that portion of your zakat right now, and make the intention that it's zakat, and this is going to be coming from your Ramadan aspect of zakat. You can give it early. Because remember, zakat is an annual giving that we give on an annual basis, and the annual means according to the lunar calendar, not the solar calendar. Because a lunar calendar makes the year, it's less. So if you're used to giving it to every August, every year you're 10 days late. And it just keeps on piling up. So following Ramadan is fine. But if that's your schedule, like the 10th of Ramadan, the 25th of Ramadan, whatever it is, that's the day you're going to calculate it. If you gave some before, then you can take it out from the total sum once the calculation occurs. Try to give zakat in many places as you can. You know, a little bit everywhere goes a long way. You know, instead of giving, like, in my opinion, this is my opinion, instead of giving $2,000 to one organization, if I give 200 here, 200 there, 200 there, whatever else, what happens is in many places, that money is adding, and alhamdulillah, it's making a combined effect, right? I'm contributing towards something bigger. One last thing about zakat is try not to give it to the same people every year because you're spoiling their nature. Many of us know people back home. We know them personally, what they're going through. Yes, they're going through something, it's no doubt. But don't keep on feeding them money every year because you're spoiling their nature. You can work towards you can spend towards skills development, towards giving them tools that they can do trade and they can kind of be self-sufficient. There's many things you can do, but try not to keep on writing checks to the same people, because what you're doing is you're not helping them, you're ruining their lives. Every human being, zakat's purpose is it goes to Muslims, and its purpose is to get a Muslim or Muslims out of the hole, so that they can get back on their feet, so that they can also give zakat and other people can be benefited. This is not a life payment. Allah forbid in this country someone gets a medical bill of $8,000. They're done. That's really big for many people. So what happens there, everyone gives a little zakat, $100 each. We help them pay off their medical bill after, fighting it down to like $4,000. Now they're back on their feet. They're going to give zakat. And when they give zakat, someone else is going to be helped also. Yes?
My question was, one of the things about zakat is that you have to have a malik. Like you have to divide the money, not an object. You cannot buy something and then give that object to someone. You have to give the money to the deserving. So, like with these organizations, I know there are fatwa that they are zakat eligible, but on a personal level, should we look out for people and give them cash, or is it okay to give cash to organizations instead?
So when it says in fiqh to make someone a malik, it means that they become the owner of whatever you give them. Zakat could be food. Zakat could be whatever. Anything that you're giving to them, you feel that's their need. For example, I know someone who has a bad habit of drinking, but they're really in need of money. So I'd rather go buy the food for them from zakat and make sure that I'm feeding their family, rather than giving them money and they're going to go to the grocery store and they're going to pick up a six-pack. They're going to, just help them buy that. Malik doesn't mean it has to be only cash. It means that they become the possessor of that money. They become the whole and sole owner of it, and they do with it what they want, and you cannot do two things. You cannot dictate where they spend the money, and number two, you cannot use them because you give them money. Sometimes we give money back home and then we call on them for favors. Hey, could you check out my house or do this? And the thing is that they're going to do it because you're doing them a favor. So it's okay, I'll do you a favor, but they're doing it only because they know that you're the one who keeps on giving them money. That's wrong. So when you make someone a malik, means you have no thing on them. Now for organizations, when you give them money, you are basically saying, I'm absolving the responsibility for myself and I'm giving it over to you because I trust you will do what needs to be done. Again, I feel that this constant trend of just giving it to an organization where there's no transparency in the level that it should be, it kind of gets lost in the message. And this is my question, that we get elaborative banquets and very prestigious dinners and stuff like that, and we call in expensive people just to raise funds for a need. Where's the money going? I really have those questions. I used to work with a few organizations, and now I don't work with any of them. I've told them I don't want to work with you because at the end of the day, my name is my credibility. I'm giving you credibility if I put my name to you, and I don't want to do that. There's only one organization I work with because I see 100% of their money going towards the cause itself, and so I'm bought into them. But the thing is that I would still not give all my money to the one organization. Take some responsibility and do it yourself. Like if you're giving 2,000, fine, give 1,500 to different organizations and take 500 and do it yourself. And see that satisfaction of, I found someone who was, according to the people who need, they're amongst the people that Allah described, and I did some good for them, and I got their du'as, and I made du'a for them. That's really a fulfilling experience, So,
also keeping a lookout within the family first, and the friends and neighbors first, and all that stuff.
That is
giving it to someone you don't even know, you're not even sure.
That is so important. SubhanAllah, thank you so much. There's this concept, I'll give it to other countries. There are people needy right around us. See, zakat concept was such that if we were to fulfill zakat within our own neighborhoods, our own towns and cities and maybe countries, we would have seen a strong impact of how zakat works. It would help eliminate bigger problems. But unfortunately, our zakat money is going so far, even within our family, someone may be in debt, someone may be sick, and we're like, no, my zakat can't go to you. Zakat can go to two people, two categories, your usul and your furur. Usul means your parents, who you've come from, and who's come from you, your children. If it's your cousin or your niece and nephew, even if it's an uncle or aunt, they're not yours, but if they're not your parents, but if they're in a dire situation, it's not best to, but if they are in a dire situation and you cannot give sadaqah, then you can give zakat to them. But at the end of the day, we should be cognizant of what's happening in our own family circle, our own neighborhood. In this country, we have some serious issues that people need help with. Doesn't matter what kind of car they drive or what kind of house they live in. We're kind of caught in the system where, debt. Yeah, and then some debts are systematic debts, like, monthly mortgage payments and this, that, and the other. But some are those things that catch you by storm and you don't know what to do. And those are things that people need help. Yes, we need to get a jacket to people somewhere in Jordan or Syria that's cold right now. Let's do some of that also. But let's not throw all our money to one place, forgetting our local. So the way I look at it is that if a person was to die and they would say that I'm going to give all my money, $1 million to a charity, only 1/3 of their wasiyah would be acknowledged and accepted. We'll give 333,000 away, but the rest 666,000 belongs to the waratha, the people who have a haqq. So if our Sharia teaches us that the people who have a haqq don't lose their haqq, then when it comes to zakat, how am I just ignoring all the people who have a haqq for my family or the people who have need and sending across? It's something to think about. It's really something to think about. Okay, so alhamdulillah, that's why calculating food expenses was there so that we can take more sadaqah out. Do more sadaqah in Ramadan in addition to your zakat. I think we just say, okay, I gave my 2.5%. No, sadaqah is really what we want to do. Every day there should be a sadaqah in addition to, of course, we said cook food, give your neighbor someone, give someone down the street, give the cross guard, whatever. Give people some food, but also give money out, inshallah. Try not to accept the invitations. Worst case scenario, one invitation in the week. The journal to what you want to gain, what you want to lose, and what you want to continue in your next 11 months. Number 6, inshallah, we want to write down tahajjud, everyone, tahajjud. This is very important. If you don't wake up and pray for it, you really don't want it. If what you need in life doesn't wake you up at night and ask you to pray for it, that means you don't want it. Look at that, I need something. So if that need is so important, get up at night and pray for it. And there's no time to taste the sweetness of tahajjud than in Ramadan. So one is you're getting up for suhoor. Just say Fajr starts at 5. You're getting up at, what time is Fajr in Ramadan?
No, that will change by the right.
3:30.
No, 3:30.
4? But that's still early. Wow. Okay. SubhanAllah. Okay, so just say it's 4. 4? Okay, just say Fajr's 4 and you're planning to wake up for suhoor at 4:15. You're going to wake up at 3:45, inshallah. We're going to give that extra half an hour to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Believe me, Ramadan is a month to really make decisions with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the month to really get things done. If Allah's giving on that month, there's no one that should be deprived from taking. Let's not be like those that just stand idle, watch people as they're going into Allah's house and they're taking all the treasures. And we're like, yeah, okay, fine, we'll get after it. If you know something is on sale, you're going to run there and you're going to stand in line to pick it up. Not Black Friday sale. Not Black Friday sale. Don't do that. That's not worth it. But if something is on sale today, you're going to go there, you're going to line up and get it because it's a limited quantity, right? It's going to finish. Why would you stand on the sideline and say, oh, these people are crazy, I'll go after? When you go after, there's nothing left. So tahajjud means we have to wake up 30 nights, 30 times we're going to wake up. And the most important night is a night of Eid. There's a hadith, whoever stays awake on the nights of Eid, their hearts will not die the day the hearts die. Meaning that is the most important night that you say to Allah your gratitude and your appreciation for the 30 nights of Ramadan. It so often happens that 29 days of Ramadan are so good, the night of Eid we miss Fajr. And we just about make it for the third Eid prayer. No, the schedule wasn't a burden. The schedule was supposed to fixate itself. You're automatically stuck in a schedule now, and it continues forward, inshallah. Yes.
So just like I go to Ramadan here, like it's gonna be 5:20. It doesn't make sense 4.
No, I was just giving an idea. If Fajr was 4, yeah. So if it's 5:20, Fajr starts, and you wake up, you're gonna plan to wake up.
So it's gonna be 4:45 instead, like or 4:30 instead of 3?
So if you're going to wake up around 4:30 just to do suhoor, just say you're going to do suhoor at 4:30 to 5:20, just wake up at 4 if you can. And if you wake up at 4, you give yourself, don't try to stick tahajjud in between making breakfast and eating breakfast. Give it its time. Because remember, we all have a lot to ask for. We have a lot of problems in our life, and I think tahajjud is the time to get it done. I really loved, I think Yasir Qadi is one who wrote this last year on Twitter, and I really caught that. It's like, if you don't wake up for it, it means you don't want it, and that's so true. If you're not waking up for it, that means it's not important to you. So we need to do 30 days at tahajjud, which means from the first night all the way to the night of Eid, inshallah, and see how that carries you forward. Many people go for Hajj and they say, you know what, I got back home and I was sleeping, I woke up at 2:45. I heard like the Hajj azan, and as I'm going to the bathroom, what happened? 2 weeks brought you in a cycle, 2 weeks. As if you heard the adhan, you're walking to haram, you got up to make wudu, and you're like, I'm not there anymore. But if 2 weeks has such an impact, 4 weeks doesn't have that impact. It's Ramadan. It's one of the greatest months on the calendar. Muharram is the month of Allah, but Ramadan is the month that Allah says He's the reward of it. So tahajjud includes the night of Eid. It includes all our prayers. Alhamdulillah. That's something we want to put in our schedule. There's going to be time allotted for it. Let's give it 30 minutes. 30 minutes means you're going to go bathroom, make wudu, of course, pray some tahajjud, make some dua. And so 30 minutes will be gone just in that, inshallah. So this is number 6 of 9 that we want to add to our Ramadan schedule, preparation, and plan. There's a lot at stake, inshallah, and I think Bidnillah will gain a lot this Ramadan. If a person is planning, they will only gain. If you're not planning and you're just hoping, keep hoping. The world will go by just hoping. We need to plan, inshallah. Any questions, inshallah, from anyone? We're good on this, inshallah. So we have 3 more slots to fill. Inshallah, upcoming days we'll do that. Until then, we will continue with the sacrifices of our sahabiyat and their love of Allah that blinded them from the love of the dunya. Their love for Allah that blinded them from criticizing the ways of Islam. Their love for Allah that made them see the world, the real world, and not the temporary mirage of a world. We always talk about this, that it's really important to bring back Allah into the equation. Bring Allah back into the homes. Bring Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala back into our conversation. Bring Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala back in our expressing gratitude and also complaining. Let's bring Allah back. Talk to Him. Allow our children to understand His existence and His presence. I spoke about it last night in the Khatira. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if my servant is anyone that comes to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and asks, where is Allah? Tell him I'm close. فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. Anyone who ever calls on me, I respond. Everyone that calls on me, they call on me because I'm close to them, and they call on me because to me they are my servants. How loving is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? We've really forgotten that. Our deen isn't technical. I keep on drilling that point. We're not a technical religion. We're not a religion based on certain aspects of fiqh or views of scholars of the past. We are a deen that is connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So all of these sahabiyat, and may Allah be pleased with all of them, all of their sacrifices, all of what they did was because the love of Allah was ingrained into every single piece of their body, every single fiber of their flesh, every single drop of blood in their system. It was ingrained in them and no one could take it out of them. That's the Islam the world does not want to see anymore. That's the Islam that the people feared true change towards betterment would come from. The people who fear Islam is because they fear stability, they fear peace, they fear goodness, they fear opportunity. They say we're doing good, but they're not doing good. They're causing fasad on this earth. Everything that's happening on this earth today is fasad, nothing else. If anyone could categorize it otherwise, then let me know. It's fasad. Our waters are tainted with lead, fasad. People don't have food to eat, it's fasad. People cannot pay their student debts, it's fasad. Bombs are being dropped across borders, it's fasad. All this is fasad. And the only solution to this wasn't a politician. The solution was when Allah was ingrained in every fiber of the body of a Muslim, they feared goodness that would stop all of this. They feared food that would eliminate poverty. They feared the water that would quench the thirst. They feared education that would not put someone into a debt. They feared peace that would not allow war. That's what they fear. And that's exactly who we have to become. If they fear goodness, and guess what? By default, I have been sent to bring goodness on this earth. And that's all I'm going to do. We're not going to run into the system. We're not going to fight with the system. We're not going to fight with people. We're here to bring about goodness. So these Sahabiya didn't go to war because they want to kill someone. They didn't take the torture from people who hated their Islam because they wanted to show how violent they were. No. It was because they were determined on the path of goodness. So we ended with the story of Sumayya radiallahu anha. We completed her story, yes. And then we had started with a new story. Atiyah Ansariya. So let's go to that. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Bukhari and Muslim narrate many hadith which illustrate the brilliance of the Muslim women during their golden age, when hearts were filled with vibrant faith, deep love for Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the desire to make Islam victorious. Remember, Islam being victorious is exactly what I articulated, that peace and that goodness to prevail on this earth. One of these reports is the account given by Imam Muslim of Atiyah al-Ansariya radiallahu anha, who said, I went out on 7 military campaigns with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I stayed behind in the camp making food for them and tending to the sick and wounded. Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu said, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to go out on military campaigns accompanied by Sulaym and some of the Ansar women. They would bring water and tend to the wounded. Imam Bukhari rahimahullah reports that Ar-Rubai binti Muawwid radiallahu anha said, we were with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam bringing water, tending to the wounded, and bringing the dead back to Medina. Bukhari and Muslim report from Anas radiallahu ta'ala who said, on the day of Uhud, when some of the people ran away from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abu Talha stood before the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, defending him with a shield. Abu Talha was a highly skilled archer, and on that day he broke 2 or 3 bows. Whenever a man passed by who had a quiver full of arrows, he would say, give it to Abu Talha. Whenever the Prophet ﷺ raised his head to see what was happening, Abu Talha told him, O Prophet of Allah, may my father and mother be sacrificed for you. Do not raise your head, lest an arrow could strike you. May it hit my chest rather than yours. Anas radiallahu anhu said, I saw Aisha bint Abi Bakr and Sulaym radiallahu anhuma, both of whom had tucked up their garments so that their anklets were not visible. They were carrying water skins on their back and were pouring water onto the mouth of the people. They would go back and fill the water skins again, then come and pour water into the mouths of the people again. Abu Talha's sword fell from his hand 2 or 3 times because of exhaustion. What a noble deed these 2 great women did in quenching the thirsts of the fighters for Allah in the midst of a raging battle and in the intense heat of the Hijaz climate. They were moving about the battlefield, not caring about the falling arrows or clashing swords that were around them. For this reason, the rightly guided Khalifa Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu preferred Salit to his own wife Kulthum bint Ali when he was sharing out some garments amongst the women of Medina, because she had sewn water skins on the day of Uhud, and this had played an important role in helping the Mujahideen and renewing their energy. Bukhari reports from Tha'laba ibn Abi Malik radiallahu ta'ala, Umar ibn Khattab sharing out some garments amongst the women of Medina. There was one good garment left, and some of the people with him said, O Amirul Mu'mineen, give this to your wife, the granddaughter of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, meaning Kulthum bint Ali. Umar radiallahu said, Salit has more right to it. Salit was one of the Ansari women who had pledged their allegiance to the Prophet ﷺ. Umar said, radiallahu ta'ala, and she carried the water skins to us on the day of Uhud. You know, I think I hope we're getting the picture here. It's such a beautiful thing. The women were part and parcel of the deen. There was not a time when women were absent from where the deen was moving and what the call of the moment was. Remember, these were not battles that the Prophet ﷺ, you know, we fear the word jihad and mujahideen and stuff. We need to teach it in the right context to our children. You have to. If you don't teach in the right context, either the wrong people will teach them or the fear of its name will make them delete it from the Quran. There's already people who have done that. They've taken out the verses of polygamy and jihad and this and that from the Quran. They said this stuff doesn't belong here. One brother forwarded to me last night a presentation some sister was going to do on Sharia, and I looked at it, I just didn't know to laugh or to cry. You know, where's our deen gone? What was she writing? What is she trying to prove? And to whom is she trying to prove? I don't know what's going on. It's like, are we that ashamed of our religion? People who came up to harm the place and the people that harbored us and gave us a safe haven, it was our religious duty beyond our moral obligation to defend. These verses of jihad that came down in Uhud, in Badr, in Khandaq. They came down after 14 years of Islam. Why? Because now they're coming to fight you. You better fight back. Mujahideen are people who defend the people in the land that they reside in. They defend their religion. They defend the houses of worship. They defend the trees and they defend the farms. And they're going to defend it from anyone who tries to invade it. That's what a Mujahideen is. Islam doesn't have to go out and spread by this. Islam is too good. It doesn't need to spread by the sword. Islam in its pure way doesn't need to go spread by street dawah, going on the corner street and telling people what your religion's about. Show what your religion is. People will come to you. People will catch you in the middle of the street. Forget the street corners. They'll come and catch you and say, I want something that you have. See, this was the call. It was a need, and no one can deny that this was a need of the moment. And when they did it right. Not only did the brothers do it, the women did it. The Prophet ﷺ on the day of Uhud, he went through the lines of the people who wanted to go for the battle, and there were children who were standing on their tippy toes and wanted to go. He said, "You're too young." You know, they're trying to fool the Prophet ﷺ by saying, "I'm tall, I'm big." He said, "No, you're not going." The elderly wanted to go. "No, you're not going." But he didn't say women can't go. See, I told you this before, the biggest failure of Islam is when we separated Islam from our women folk. No, men do this, women don't do this. Yes, women get the same reward of praying at the home as a man does going into the masjid, but that doesn't mean a woman shouldn't come to the masjid. See how we twisted our religion? How we said, okay, women don't need to come to masjid, women don't need to learn. If there's no education happening in the house on behalf of the family, then we have to come to the masjid and learn. Where else are we going to learn? The women, the Sahabiyat informed us, and we learned in this book, that they learned Surah Qaf because the Prophet ﷺ recited it in Fajr. They were going for prayer. They were going to the battleground. When this dress was the last and beautiful dress, he said, no, she deserves it because she was making the water skins and she was being instrumental on that day with the Prophet ﷺ. What went right on Uhud? Everything was wrong. According to logic now, the Bilal shouldn't say it like that, but everything was wrong. The Sahabas weren't on page of the Prophet ﷺ. They said, we need to go out. He said, we want to stay in. And he starts going out, and when they stop at the house of the two elderly people, the couple, and he stayed the night with them. The next morning, that's Masjid Sheikhain. It's on the northeastern side of between Masjid Nabi and Uhud. They stopped there, and the next morning, a great masses of the munafiqeen said, "Hey, we don't want to go anymore. We're going back home." And then he goes to Uhud and he starts, lining up the people. And even there, some Sahabas never listened. Jabal Rumat was left empty, and Khalid bin Walid and them came back, and they attacked the Prophet ﷺ, gashes in his head, lips swelled up, tooth broken. What didn't happen that day? But what did happen right was that the Sahabiyat stuck to the plan and they did what had to be done. Sahabas wavered a bit, but the female companions did not. They were doing their work properly. And it was a collective effort that brought about the success for Islam. So the thing is that I don't know why, and I still don't understand why the women folk are being deprived from playing that instrumental role in Islam. They should be part and parcel of everything. If Aisha radiallahu anha did it, then who is there to say that we shouldn't do it? Unless they feel that we are better than her. I just don't understand. So the women were part and parcel of the days of hunger and the days of food, the days of boycott and the days of the conquest of Mecca. Women were part and parcel in the wars, and at the time the delegations came to the Masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. They were there in serving, they were there in learning, they were there in teaching. So this separation is what caused the rise of certain women movements in Islam. And in truth, in reality, Islam didn't stand for either or. It didn't stand for women only, and it didn't stand for without women. It stands for all of us working together. So I hope these stories of history remind us of the role that the sisters played in their Islam. It's very important. At Uhud, the Prophet ﷺ's cheek and upper lip were wounded. His tooth was broken. His daughter Fatima radiallahu anha washed his wounds, whilst Ali poured the water. When Fatima radiallahu anha saw the water only made the bleeding worse, she took a piece of matting, burned it, and applied it to the wound to stop the bleeding. Amongst the women who stood firm at the most intense moments of the Battle of Uhud was Safiya bint Abdul Muttalib radiallahu anha, the paternal aunt of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She stood with a spear in her hand, striking the faces of the people and saying, "Are you running away from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam?" When the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw her, he gestured to her son, Zubair ibn Awam, that he should bring her back so that she would not see what had happened to her brother Hamza. She said, "Why? I have heard that my brother has been mutilated. But that is nothing for the sake of Allah. We accept what has happened, and I shall hope for reward and be patient, inshallah." You know, when Prophet ﷺ said, let's bring her in now because she's going to get emotional if she finds out what happened to Hamza radiallahu anh, the Prophet ﷺ was, of course, emotional. Uhud was emotional. When they said, let's take his body back to Medina, Uhud moved. The mountain moved. The mountain said, if he's going, I'm going. And then Prophet ﷺ struck a deal with the mountain that the shuhada of Uhud will be buried here. And Uhud will stay here. Uhud is a mountain of paradise. Jabalun yuhibbuna wa nuhibbuhu. Uhud is a mountain that the believers love, and it loves the believers. So when you go there and you see it, you're seeing something of paradise. That is in paradise. That is the mountain of paradise. In Medina, there's the mountain of paradise. There's the valley of paradise. There is the garden of paradise. There is the queen of paradise. SubhanAllah, there's so much of paradise in Medina Munawwara. But also, we have the mountain of hell. On the outskirts of Medina, you have Jabal Ir. Jabal Ir is the mountain of hell. It is a pitch dark, eerie, disgusting mountain. It's more on the north. It's on the southwestern side of Masjid Nabi. There's also the mountain of hell there, so you can see heaven and hell in one city. You can see it all in one city. So Subhanallah, you know, the line of Allah is in Uhud. That's Hamza radiallahu ta'ala. You have Fatima radiallahu anha. You have mashallah. You have so much, mashallah, the family. It's just a beautiful reminder. Riyadul Jannah, you go and pray Riyadul Jannah, you're praying in paradise. So subhanAllah, what else can be of a reminder to us? And when the Prophet ﷺ couldn't even recognize his uncle amongst the deceased because his body, as she knew, was mutilated, it didn't stop her from doing what she needed to do. Her thing was, we are not ourselves. We don't belong to ourselves. We don't have our own desires or wishes to live this land and live in this life. We have those desires and wishes for tomorrow. We are here for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Each atom of energy, each piece of my body is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If it happened, it happened. That's fine. He's gone to Allah. I need to get to Allah too. That was the mindset. See, the world didn't slow them down from getting to Allah. Today's situations slow us down. Today's situations make us doubt and rethink or reassess where we're going, why we're going, and why it's taking so long. They were just focused. We're going to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tomorrow's going to be the day to answer all the questions. You're not going to understand everything today. Why certain things happen and what was the wisdom behind it, we're not here to understand that. We're just not. If that was the case, then this wasn't a test. There's some things we're never going to understand. Why did this happen to my child? Why did I get divorced? We're not here to understand that. We're here to continue our journey, do the best we can. Tomorrow, Allah will explain that all and more. And Allah will compensate for all that and more. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow us to fulfill all our wishes and desires and more. That's all going to happen tomorrow. Let this world be what it is. It's only 60 years. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cursed it, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cursed this place, as the Prophet said, "Ad-dunya mal'oonun wa mal'oonun ma fiha." This earth is cursed. Whatever in it is cursed. So what are we loving it for? We're not to hate it. We're not to curse it. We're not to despise it or shun from it. It's Allah's creation. But He created it في ستة أيام في أربعة أيام. In 4 days Allah created all this. And then what happened was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave it to us to take care of it. We take care of it, we use it, we don't abuse it, or nor do we immerse ourselves into it. Just live with it. Live with it as a ship lives on top of water. It uses the water to get from point A to point B. It doesn't allow the water to get inside the ship, because if the water gets inside the ship goes inside the water and it's done, right? So how I live on this earth, how I face my situations, how I confront my problems, how I live with them tagging along as I move to my Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that sense of resolve has to be made. Because the smallest things will then stop us, it will stall us, and you're right now traveling in a desert, it's early morning, you have till 11 o'clock to get as far as you can and get some shade, because from 11 to 3, it is hot. And if you're going to complain right now at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning and take your time, you're not going to reach the shade by 11 o'clock. So we just need to keep moving, inshallah. And know that the women before us, they moved, they died, they're successful in what they did in their life, they have no remorse or regret for what they've done. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has honored them in the Quran, saying He's pleased with all of them. That means they did something right. You know, there's an example to show us they did something right. So let's keep moving along also, inshallah, and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His goodness. There's time to ask Allah for His help and goodness, and there's time to continue our work. Alhamdulillah. Safiya radiallahu anha was also present at the Battle of Khandaq, the trench. Another beautiful story of sacrifice. When the Prophet ﷺ set out from Medina to fight his enemies, he put his wives and womenfolk in the fortress of the poet Hassan ibn Thabit, which was one of the most secure fortresses in Medina. A Jewish man came by and began to walk around the fortress. Safiya radiallahu ta'ala said, "O Hassan, this Jew is walking around the fortress, and by Allah I fear that he will go and tell the other Jews out there that we are here." So what was happening was, we know that there was something strange happening in Medina. There was a treaty signed between Banu Qaynuqa, Banu Nadir, and Banu Qurayza, the 3 Jewish tribes, and the Prophet ﷺ, and Aus and Khazraj, that there's going to be respect here. Everyone's going to practice religion. No one's going to plot against anyone. No one's going to commit treason or conspire to hurt anyone else. But this battle showed that there was something really wrong in Medina. And the Prophet ﷺ couldn't put his finger on it. Something is going on. And so after the battle was, there was conspiracy happening from within Medina to the people of Mecca. They were conspiring with them and telling them how to come, how to defeat the Prophet ﷺ. Either telling the enemies of the Prophet ﷺ, come and destroy our town, ruin our houses, destroy the city that's in development, and kill this man. What are you going to get out of it? I don't know. So when the Prophet ﷺ found out, and Salman Farsi radiallahu ta'ala said, we'll build this trench, and the trench was being dug, and we know that how hard that was. Sahaba had stones tied to their stomach. The Prophet ﷺ had two tied to his stomach, and then they went to someone's house to eat. The Prophet ﷺ cooked, and they fed, and then he prayed. Everyone ate, and the goat got up and walked away. Another miracle of the Prophet ﷺ. All these things had happened, but then the battle was almost like a 40 days of stagnant. It was just sitting there looking at each other's faces. Quraysh is on that side, the believers on this side, just looking at each other's faces. They didn't know how to go, because if they were to bring their horses, the horse would get stuck. It was large enough that a horse couldn't cross, and it was deep enough that a horse couldn't come out. So they didn't know how this would go. And then on the final day, after weeks of dua from the Prophet ﷺ, a windstorm came, and it was so bad and severe that their animals ran away and their tents flew away, and they're like, you know what, we just need to go back. But the Prophet ﷺ is now coming back home, and Jibreel ﷺ is there, and he's in armor. He goes, we're going for our next battle. You know, this is not coming off right now, because one of the Jewish tribes are the ones who caused all this, and now they need to be dealt with. There was two ways. It was Banu Qurayza. There was two ways of dealing with them. There was the way of dealing with them according to the Medina law, and there was a way of dealing with them according to the Islamic law. I want everyone to remember this. Islamic law would have been that, of course, they would have been punished for what they did. According to Medina law, they would have been killed for what they did, because that was a treaty they signed with the Prophet ﷺ. But they didn't do either. The Prophet ﷺ appointed one of their own, who was a Muslim, to be a judge on them for what they did, and he ruled by the Torah. That according to Torah, what they did, treason, they were killed. A mass majority of them were killed. A lot of them were then sent into exile to Khaybar, which still today is by United Nations Jewish land. It's their land, and it's in Saudi Arabia. It's their land. They were sent there. So when people talk about the Jews being killed in Medina, know that this was the people who conspired with enemies to ruin their country, to ruin their city, to ruin their people, to ruin their homes. And so the Prophet ﷺ didn't enforce on them Quranic law, because the Quranic law is not enforced on non-believers. Yes, the rules of protecting other people is enforced. When the Quran says that they're protected, then we have to protect. When it comes to the laws of adultery or whatever else, it does not apply to them. Number two, it could have been the treaty, but it wasn't the treaty. They were punished based on their own book, the Torah, based on their own religion of Judaism. They were punished by that based on the judgment made by their own family member who knew the Torah as good as they did. So what happened was that there's this one Jewish man. So if you understand it in context with what's being said, there was some thought that something is not right. So she said the Jewish man is walking around, and she said, I fear he's going to go and tell the others, the Prophet ﷺ and his companions are too busy to come and help us, so go down and kill him. Hassan said, may Allah forgive you, O daughter of Abdul Muttalib. By Allah, you know that I am not like that. When Safiya heard this, she stood up, took hold of a wooden post, went down from the fortress herself. She struck him and she killed him, then went back to the fortress and said, O Hassan, go down and strip him of his arms and armor. The only thing that is preventing me from doing so is that he is a man. Hassan said, I have no need of this booty. I don't need his stuff, O daughter of Abdul Muttalib. Safiya was also present at the Battle of Khaybar, one of the most distinguished women who took part in the Battle of Uhud. So let me stop there. So basically she did that so people could say, oh my gosh, she killed someone without knowing he was amongst the ones conspiring. He was. So her instincts was he was an enemy, and she knew that he was a part of the plot, because now the Prophet ﷺ was out and the Sahabas are outside of Medina doing their stuff. This was the best time to kill the family. This was the best time to round them all up and make them feel the pain. But by killing him, she actually saved all the women of the Prophet ﷺ's wives and family members, because it could have become something altogether, something different. So one of the most distinguished women who took part in the Battle of Uhud, if not most distinguished of them, was Nasiba bint Ka'b al-Mazaniya, Ammara radiallahu ta'ala anha. At the beginning of the battle, she was bringing water and tending to the wounded, as the other women were doing. When the battle was going in the favor of the Muslims, the archers disobeyed the command of the Prophet ﷺ. We know that story. And this turned the victory into defeat, as the Quran describes in Surah Al-Imran, verse number 153. Behold, you are climbing up the high ground without even casting a side glance at anyone, and the messenger in your rear was calling you back. It was such a bad condition. Everything went wrong, even at that time when they came down, and then everyone got distorted. Everyone moved around. The lines were broken. The enemies penetrated those lines, and a lot of the Sahaba were killed. At this point, when everything was going wrong, Nasiba went forward with her sword unsheathed and her bow in her hand to join the small group who were standing firm with the Prophet ﷺ, acting as a human shield to protect him from the arrows of the mushrikeen. Every time danger approached the Prophet ﷺ, she hastened to protect him. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ noticed this and later said, whenever I turned to left or right, I saw her fighting for me. Her son Umara also describes what happened on that tremendous day. On that day, I was wounded in my left hand. A man who seemed to be as tall as a palm tree struck me, then went away without pursuing to finish me off. The blood began to flow. So the Messenger of Allah told me, bind up your wound. My mother came to me and she was wearing a waist wrapper. She said, which she had brought for the purpose of wrapping wounds. She dressed my wound while the Prophet ﷺ was looking on. Then she told me, get up, my son, and fight the people. The Prophet ﷺ said, would you bear what you are putting up with, O Ammara? She said, the man who has struck my son came by, and the Messenger of Allah said, this is the one who struck your son. I intercepted him and hit him in the thigh, and he collapsed. I saw the Prophet ﷺ smiling so broadly that you could see his back teeth. He said, you have taken your revenge, O Ammara. Then we struck him with the weapons until we killed him. And the Prophet ﷺ said, praise be to Allah who granted you victory over him, gave you the satisfaction of taking revenge on your enemy, and let you see the vengeance for yourself. On this day, Nasiba herself received many wounds while she was fighting the people and striking their chests. The Prophet ﷺ saw her and called to her son, your mother, see to her wounds. May Allah bless you and your household. Your mother has fought better than so and so. When his mother heard what the Prophet ﷺ said, she said, praise be to Allah that we may accompany you in paradise. He said, O Allah, make them my companions in paradise. She said, I do not care what befalls me in this world. See, that's exactly what it's all about. You know, it's not about fighting, it's not about killing, it's not about taking revenge. They took 13 years of persecution and they left and they said, no more. We don't need you, we don't need this drama, we don't need our homes, let it be. For Allah, we left it behind. But when they came all the way, this was personal. And this was the obligation that something had to be done. And at that time, when certain people feared for their lives, feared what would happen, they did not fear the slightest bit. When a hurricane happens and you fear going down to Houston to help, what would happen to me? Where am I going to eat or go to the bathroom? That means your reliance isn't on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are people who drop everything in a moment's notice and they go into the depths of the problem. They go into the heat of the moment. They go in the heart of a predicament and they do what needs to be done, not looking at who they are and what they need. They put aside their sleep, they put aside their comfort, they put aside their luxury, they put aside their food. Why? Because the need is greater than myself. That's exactly what Islam is trying to say. They never thought twice about what if or what will or when this or when. They didn't care about that stuff. The need was there, the call was there, it was legit, it was a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not only did they participate, but they shined with full colors, alhamdulillah. So I want to stop there because mashallah we read quite a few stories, and there's just one or two more stories of the Sahabiyat who did what they did for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they were the people due to whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down verses of the Holy Quran for their valor and for their goodness and their commitment to the deen of Islam. The point is, sisters, that that level of commitment was presented by the Sahabiyat. We learned it last week, that when the brothers of Islam were tortured, many of them caved except for Bilal radiallahu ta'ala, but none of the Sahabiyat ever caved. It's a quality that Allah has given to the women. It's a quality that you inculcate into your children. The quality of determination, the quality of resolve, the quality of bearing hardships, the quality of getting through a problem is something as a mother you give to your children. Boy or girl, it's what you give. It's not something that a father can give. Allah has made parents, each one plays an instrumental role in their children's life. No one can improvise or do everything for the child. If we understand this, we understand the role we play, then we understand what type of children we're making. We are producing children in a world that needs them and their commitment for Allah. For Allah. And if we can't do anything, then we have failed all aspects of our religion. We have failed the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The blood that was sacrificed in the days of Uhud and in the days of Badr, this was waste. The sacrifices that were made by the Sahaba and the Sahabiyat to leave their homes in Mecca and to leave their families in Mecca and to migrate to Medina and to face difficulty and hardship, we wasted it. We're wasting it. Our elders and our past predecessors, they did what they could do in their time. Whatever the need was of the moment. Islam's history is full of stories of how the need of the moment was addressed by the Muslims of that time. There's 1,000,001 needs of this moment. What are we addressing? What are we addressing? So we have a job to do. It has to be done collectively. It has to be done along with the brothers of Islam. It has to be done by enriching our children with the values that are needed to bring forth a solution that is so direly needed. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, guide our hearts, guide our intentions, guide our sense of resolve to understand the bigger picture that was in their mind, which was to be with the Prophet ﷺ in Jannah. Even though they saw him in this dunya, they wanted to be with him in Jannah. We haven't seen him. We should make more effort to be with him, not to fight or to cause violence, but to bring about goodness and justice on this earth and to make sure every human being has their right in our world and in our land and in other lands also. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. And inshallah, we will move on from this and we'll go into how a sister works for the goodness of, after her Lord comes her family and herself. There's a lot that needs to be covered, inshallah. We're going to pick up the pace a bit because alhamdulillah, we do speak a lot on these things just to make sure the case is there. I feel that if we did not put things in context, many people might take things in a different manner. So alhamdulillah, I thank you all for your patience and understanding of it. And inshallah, we will get through this soon, inshallah. Inshallah. Any questions in regards to this? Anything of today or anything that was discussed previously? Anyone has any questions, inshallah? Her name is the last one, yes. Yes.
So I just want to make sure, so this is Battle of Ahad and Brothers, so do you have the revelation of the ayat of hijab or before? Is better or after?
The ayat of hijab came after. Salah, Zakat, and Tahara came down in Makkah. Every other command came down in Medina. And it came down much later. But even hijab didn't mean that the women were not doing their hijab at that time.
I just want to understand how the women were dressed at that time because they were so close with men. And that's the biggest conflict and what we see against women right now, that whenever we have, let's say if we interpret that in our life right now, we are fundraising, we have, Ramadan fasting and we arrange all the events. How how do we interpret that in terms of, how women were together with men, maintaining their modesty, so how do we that?
See, the difference was they were together with men, they were doing their things alongside with the men.
That's what
Yeah,
we do too.
exactly. So that mindset of something is being done and we're playing our role in doing something helps accomplish the job. Whereas the mindset of not having a focal point or a common goal makes that religious act that we're planning to pursue into a social engagement. So if we're just going to come together and talk and there's nothing from that, then that's not what the Sahabas and the Sahabiyat did. They were instrumental at the time of the need to get what needed to be done. So they're working alongside. Nowadays, either we have total disconnect that the brothers and sisters cannot work together, or we say, oh, brothers and sisters should sit together and talk about things and do what? Like, are you doing something? Is there something that we're accomplishing by doing this? Or are we just sitting down talking? So it wasn't so social. It wasn't a social event as much as it was a productive task that they were doing together. So once their minds were set on that common goal, they worked together. Alhamdulillah, the dress of the Sahabiyat were always modest. Their clothing was always modest. And hijab was just like the cherry on the cake of modesty. It was that final piece of saying how that modesty would differentiate them from the others around them. And in our time, that modesty is more of a challenge because people didn't dress then as they dress now. Like, the only time you hear about nudity in Arabia at that time was that the Quraysh and other tribes felt that to make tawaf of the house with the clothing in which you sinned was bad. It was disrespectful. So if they couldn't afford to rent the clothing of some pious people of Quraysh, what they would do is they would make tawaf in the darkness of night naked because they felt that this was out of respect of the house. That was the only thing I could recall in history that showed that that's what they did. But everyone's clothing, regardless, was very modest. Our time, it's the opposite. Our time is the less you wear, the more honorable you are. So it's to bring back that concept in our children's mind to say that clothing is our honor. Let's not even talk about hijab to our children. Talk about clothing being our honor because they're seeing the opposite. It's the more revealing you are, the more honorable you are in society. And respected by who? For what? What's this trend coming from? That needs to be instilled because then that gives meaning to the hijab for being what it is. Working, we have to teach our children that if they're going to be in school, they're going to go to university, they're going to work with each other. What is the right method of gender interaction? It has to be talked about. A few months ago in our team discussion, I had spoken about this. I thought it was a need because we had so many things happening here in Dallas. That how do you talk to each other? I had them demonstrate that. How you look at each other, how you talk to each other, how it's purpose-based, how the tone is kept, how the discussion, once we are complete, we just need to walk. There's no like, okay, let's go have a coffee and talk about this. No, you need to have coffee. You just need to do the work, right? You can have a coffee yourself after, So the thing is that has to be taught to them. Modesty. The key is modesty. Modesty in interaction. Modesty in working together. Modesty in working alongside each other. Modesty in our tone, our discussions, our dress, our demeanor. It's all about modesty. So yeah, that has to be brought back. And it's a challenge. It's a big challenge, but we have to take it up. We really do. I fear for those parents who tell their children it's haram to talk to the opposite gender, where they're getting their fatwas from. And unfortunately, those same children, when they go out into the world, they don't just talk. They don't even know what to do. They'll touch, they'll do everything, and they don't even know if they're doing something wrong. They really don't. They don't know. They haven't been taught. They've been put in that cage. It's like a bird that's been put in the cage its whole life and said, now go fly. Like, how do I fly? I do have wings, but I don't know how to fly. It's like a domesticated lion, 2 generations, 3 generations, then taken back into the jungle, so you're the king of the jungle. The lion will be eaten alive because it doesn't know what it is. It's been changed. So in opportunities when they arise, we have to teach our children these things. because they're going to go out in the world regardless if we like it or not. So it needs to be done, inshallah. Alhamdulillah. Sorry for saying that, talking too long. Alhamdulillah. Any other questions, inshallah? Anyone?
I just want to add to that.
Yeah.
I think what the dress of Arabia, the women of Arabia, even before the advent of Islam, they used to wear loose flowing clothes, not the pants and shirts that are revealing. So even if the hijab ayahs did not come, they were still dressed in a way that their form did not show. And then we just read the hadith where the anklet of Hazrat Aisha radiallahu anha was showing this, like she's lifting her skirt or the flowy garment, where just the anklet is even not showing. So that means it was like fully covered. And by the time and even when the hijab was made compulsory, it came first for the Azhar and this because Prophet's wife Sauda was very tall and I think I'm talking about the ayah that the
when she
hijab
got
came, the first ayah was because she went out to
قل لأزواجك
herself.
وبناتك ونساء المؤمنين يدين عليهن من جلابيبهن.
So she went out to relieve herself, and then Omar noticed that she was very tall and came and talked with Prophet Muhammad. So basically, it was not about like the clothes were never fitting. They were the eyes of hijab were to kind of like add more respect to the woman than actually cover her.
Yeah. ذلك أدنى أن يعرفن فلا يؤذين. It would minimize the opportunities of them being noticed, who they are, and eliminate the possibility of them being harmed. So that hijab was like in Arabia, the burqa that we see people wearing, it was the common dress in the deserts now for two reasons. Like you ask a sister, why is she wearing dark black in such a hot climate? Well, and such a loose garment. It had its reasons. Now, when they wore that, of course, it attracts heat, and of course they would sweat, but the looseness of it would allow the air to come in, and it would kind of give them feel cool. And number two, on the back of their burqa, on the bottom, they had like a piece of wood kind of nailed into it. So when they were walking in the desert, it was actually wiping out their footsteps as they were walking, so that no one could know who came and where they're going. Because of course in the desert, you just have to follow footsteps. You know, if you see a whole bunch of footsteps, okay, there's a caravan here, looks like they have some horses, looks like they have some money on this thing, let's just follow it. So this was to also drag in to make sure that no one could see where they went and who was coming or going through. So there's a lot of wisdom in what they dressed like and why they dressed the way they did. And all I could say is the dress that we wear anywhere in the world should uphold the same values. It doesn't have to be the same piece of cloth or the same color, but it has to uphold the same values. You know, if I'm living in Alaska and I'm wearing a polyester burqa, I'm going to freeze to death, right? I need to wear more than that. So wear whatever needs to be worn, but uphold modesty. And I think we're the best judges of that when we understand it in the context of what modesty would be, inshallah.
So just want to say, like, even like in Europe and England, here in the States, like hundreds of years ago, not far, you know, the clothing is nothing like now.
Yes.
Nothing. I remember once, like, I was in Walmart and he stopped me. I got scared at the beginning. He said, he likes that way. He said, I don't know what's happened in the States. He's old now, 80s. So he can see, he himself, he can see the difference. And like the way they dress now.
100%. It's not even 100 years.
Modesty is for everyone. Like our Islam just like make it like a rule and like the way and like how to dress ourselves. But even like for the whole humanity, it's like the modesty, just like to present yourself.
So to end on this modesty talk, if you go to the New York University, the New York Museum, Metropolitan Museum in New York, what was the name of that park? What's that park in New York? Central Park. So in Central Park around it, there's a lot of museums. And I remember my wife and I went to that one a few years ago. And it showed how women's dressed in the 30s and the 40s. It was full-fledged, top to bottom, multiple layers with the hat and everything else. So you're talking in the 60s and 70s, a revolution came about of the hippie movement, and then you talk about, the music culture, and with the music culture came all the clothing. Even then, with the hippie music movement, there was more like long bell-bottoms type of clothing and fitting tops, but then it just became more and more revealing. So right now we're talking about 10, 15, 20 years of clothing. You cannot use that as a staple of how people dress for the last 1400 plus years. Clothing, even in America and Europe, women used to go to church with veils on. They used to go to church with head covering, and the Jewish women still do. And some Christians still
There's
do.
some tribe that like, yeah, just like still cover their
They still cover themselves top to bottom.
Jewish men.
Yes. So again, the thing is, this is where it comes down to. When we don't know the history, and we don't know when we don't know history, and we don't know the importance of what our law played in molding how history went, we will fall victim to the now. Oh, right now this is happening. But like, okay, think what happened just thousands of years till now. It didn't happen. As I said to you all a few weeks ago, for every generation till now, it was the norm. Everyone got married. Now the case is being built. You could actually live a better life single and die happy without having this case is being built. It's never happened before. So prove to me that thousands and thousands of years and millenniums that have passed, everyone was wrong, and now this concept or this theory is right. We need to let it work its way out. We want to see those men and women grow up, live their career, retire, have their own birthday parties alone, and then die in a bed alone where no one's there to even know that they died. We want that to play out, to show to me that not being part of a family is better than being part of a family. This anti-social movement has to stop. And the only way it can stop is for you and I as people of families to restore the values of what it means to be part of a family. And that's effort. In times like this, we should not use religion as a tool to put down others. You cannot use hijab as a tool to discriminate against some sister who doesn't wear hijab at a time when wearing full clothing isn't the norm. It has to stop. It is not the time for husbands and wives to fight and make marriage look so despicable when being married is considered to be a life sentence. We have to fix these things now. We really do. Because if we don't fix it, we're contributing towards a problem of saying, yeah, they're right in what they're saying, and we were wrong in doing what we did. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us, inshallah, and protect us and forgive us, inshallah.